I didn't
love
even this now when people go open up the replay or hello, the first words are going to be pelvic floor. I didn't know I had one. I didn't know what it was. I'm still kind of mystified by it and so forth. So yeah,
and that it's
it
a
was
muscle that you actually have to exercise. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's like I'm not breathing through my whole body. I'm like I seem to be breathing like correctly and so forth, but it's been interesting. So welcome everyone to tonight's deep dive with Kathy Fritz. She is a board certified hormone coach, and she'll get into what that actually means and so forth. And we are talking all things weight related for perimenopause and menopause. And considering that both are kind of not so fun, they should have much better names. Like I think we need to give them more like something like we're going like my mom always like we're going through the change. I'm like no, that's not good either. Like I want something fun. Like this is a like midlife party. It's got to have. I'll give bonus points to anyone if you come up with a better name
Well, I like the
for either one.
Japanese word, and I'll probably mispronounce it, but it sounds cool. It's konuki. And if anyone knows Japanese better, please correct my pronunciation. But it means a time of renewal.
Ooh. See, that's a better reframe for
Well,
this.
we are renewing during this time. Yes, it's a different type of renewal than when we go from our childhood body to our, reproductive body. That's a renewal in some ways. This is just a different kind of renewal as we actually return to the wisdom and wildness of childhood.
And see, that's how those who are within my community, that's the whole like, our little artist child that has been like stuffed down for so long. Like that's a great frame.
And we didn't even practice that, you guys. This is
No,
this is totally off the cuff.
All off the cuff. Excellent. So I would love, and this would help kind of for us to frame a conversation. We're not going to go around. We have a great group here tonight and a lot of new faces. And so I won't make you all introduce yourselves and so forth, but if you could please, in the chat, just where you're calling from and what's like one burning question, or what is the one thing, if there was only one thing you got out of this evening, what is it? And then that will help us kind of frame the conversation and so forth. And that way, if you're a little bit shyer about asking questions, I can use that. And thank you to all those who emailed me your questions so that I can ask them on your behalf if you're not comfortable doing so. Excellent. So I want to see that chat light up. Okay. And now I'm going to spotlight on Kathy for us. And I'm not going to spotlight myself because I don't need to. And I am going to let her introduce herself, take it away, and then we'll go from there.
Fabulous. Well, I did put together a few slides just because sometimes that helps. Can I have screen sharing, Janessa? Just to keep myself kind of focused, and I can get tangential, believe it or not. And so I just want to make sure that I stay focused. Okay, here we go. Okay, so hopefully you guys can all see that. Let me go into slideshow, nice and big for you. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that by coming tonight, you're putting yourself first. And as women, so often we don't do that. So I just want to pause for a moment, and you can either give yourself a real pat on the back or a little hug, or, just imagine yourself doing it and saying, yeah, I am worthy of learning information so I can better take care of my body. So I'm Kathy Fritz. I'm your hormone coach. And as Janessa mentioned, I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. Basically, when I was going through this process, I was like, what is the certification that matters the most in my industry? And this is what matters the most. And so that's the certification I got, just because I don't want you to think this is some sort of like side job that I do. This is what I do. I help women in perimenopause and menopause and get rid of challenges that they don't want. So whether that is a weight challenge, or if it's a mood challenge, sleep challenge, hair loss, hair growing. I mean, the list goes on. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. So you're all here to talk about all things weight. And it's really hard actually to put a label on this. And so I went with weight management, and I still think that's an imperfect label, because it's about so much more. You know, when we talk about weight, it's not really just about weight. So we'll get to that in a moment. I want to pause for a minute and just put out there that if this is triggering for you, then it's cool if you leave. Maybe, you know, you're like, oh, this sounds interesting. But if you're somebody for whom discussions around weight make you really anxious or depressed or feel badly about yourself, maybe this just isn't the time for this discussion for you. And maybe there's going to be time later. So I just want to give you permission to kind of think about yourself, think about where you are. And is this really what you need right now? And maybe it is. And if it is, then definitely stay. We're going to have an awesome discussion. You're going to get to ask your questions. But I just wanted to put that out there. Okay. So here are the facts, ladies. In perimenopause and menopause, women gain weight. And it's not as much of a focus on the scale number as it is on a shape change. So the shift from a body that's focused on reproducing, whether or not you had kids, your body at first period onset to final period is focused on reproducing, to the body that is no longer focused on reproducing. We have this change in our shapes, especially around our hips and our waist. So what that generally means is we go from more of that kind of hourglass shape to more of that apple shape. And so our fat storage is around our midsection in a new way in perimenopause and menopause. And these are the facts. This is just what happens. There is a shift in our hormones as well. So cortisol, which is our stress hormone, it's our fight or flight hormone, that generally is really being triggered during midlife. And so when our cortisol is triggered, it tells our body like, oh, something's not good. We might be headed into a famine, or we might need some storage to call on. So we better store some stuff. Oh, look at this new area that suddenly is saying, hey, I could store stuff for you. So again, that's how we get that that fat storage around the midsection. Insulin is also a hormone. And that is very sensitive when we're younger. And as we head through midlife, that insulin, our cells rather, become less sensitive to that hormone. So insulin's like, hey, I'm here. And cells are like, what? I can't hear you, huh? And so the body's like, oh, I'll just send out some more insulin then. And the cells are like, whoa, I don't need this much insulin. So there's like this poor conversation happening between our insulin and our cells. And then there's the estrogen piece. So as our estrogen is decreasing, it is again signaling to our bodies like, oh, you can put some of that storage right in that midsection area. So again, this is just what's happening through the perimenopause transition. So I put the average here, not because I want anyone to feel badly about themselves, but because this is an average. There are going to be people below it. There are going to be people above it. So the average is about 0.8 pounds of weight gain a year, which is around 6.5 pounds over the perimenopause transition. So when I work with a client and she is like super focused because she's gone through perimenopause and is in menopause and she gained 5 pounds and she can't lose it, I have to kind of like reset her expectations and say, look, these are the facts, honey. You know, you need to wrap your mind around that. So when I said earlier that weight's complicated, it really is, because it's not just about a number on a scale. In fact, that's my next slide. Weight management in perimenopause and menopause is complicated. It's not one factor. Things that used to work don't work anymore. And so, yeah, there's complexity there. First of all, I always like to bring up genetics. All of our genes are different from each other. And some of us are more genetically predisposed to storing fat, and other people are more genetically predisposed to burning fat. There's nothing you can do about that. Your genes are your genes, but there are a lot of other things you can do that make up the rest of the puzzle. So there's got to be some acceptance about, yep, my genetics are my genetics. This is where I'm at. But here are some things that I can do. Here are some levers I can pull to help me be able to feel good in my skin. So the first thing I start is loss of muscle. Okay, so naturally, as we age, it's harder for us to maintain muscle. Muscle is what I call a glucose sponge. It soaks up glucose. Glucose that isn't soaked up gets stored as fat. So we really like our muscles to get used because then they use up the glucose and then they need to refill. The body makes that the priority, not fat storage, but getting those muscles refilled. And so the glucose goes into the muscles. Now, if you're not using your muscles and those are shrinking, well, all of a sudden, not as much glucose is needed to go into them. And most people are kind of eating the same that they ate before. So the combination of those two factors really plays into your overall weight during perimenopause. We get more sedentary. I mean, think about it. My job is entirely at desk. A lot of us are working from home. Although, maybe we try to get out once a day for a walk, we know that our ancestors did not sit the way we do. And when they did sit, they sat on the ground. So they had to get up and down from the ground. So all of this is, again, complicating weight management in perimenopause. I could talk about sleep for a whole other hour. Sleep is so essential. If you are not sleeping, you will not be able to manage your weight. So I won't get into the details right now. I'm going to mention circadian rhythm later, but let's just say if weight loss is a goal, but you're not sleeping, it's an impossible goal to reach. And then the last thing I want to touch on is eating habit changes. So again, as we are going through the perimenopause transition, sometimes our eating habits are changing in a way that is not supportive of the midlife body. So this is really complicated stuff. And weight loss is slower in perimenopause and menopause. So we're yeah, I used to be able to drop 5 pounds in 2 weeks just by cutting my calories and increasing my exercise. Why isn't that working anymore? Because your midlife body is really different than your reproductive body or the body that was focused on reproduction. And so again, it's just setting that expectation. It's going to take longer, but it's still possible. So rather than only focus on a scale number, I want to offer a few other areas of health to focus on. The first is called the waist to hip ratio. And this is actually more important than the scale number. The waist to hip ratio is indicative of long-term health and longevity. When we have a waist to hip ratio that is not ideal, we are more likely to see things like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, all of these more chronic illnesses that can really impact how we do through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. So that ratio is definitely a more important measurement than any number on a scale. And another reason for that is because muscle maintenance is more important than a number on a scale. You've all heard muscle weighs more than fat, and that's true. So we want to just maintain the muscle we have. Now, growing muscle, yes, we can work on that, but really step one is you got to maintain it. And remember earlier when I talked about insulin and glycogen and glucose, all of this is relevant. But another thing to touch on briefly is bone health. And we know that muscle health is very related to bone health. And so again, I love helping women in the perimenopause transition or in their menopausal years. But the goal is always quality life, right? Quality life well into the golden years. And so things like your waist to hip ratio and maintaining your muscle are going to have more of an impact on that than a scale number. And then you really want to eat based on your movement over the course of a day, not on your routine. We get stuck with food, right? And we're like, well, this is what I eat for breakfast. And then I have a snack and it's always this. And then lunch is this. And I have a snack and then dinner's that. And we're just creatures of habit. And instead of saying, hey, it was kind of a sedentary day, I probably don't need the same amount of calories as yesterday when I was able to get out for a walk and I had to, do some errands. Part of this is around our resting, caloric burning decreases as we age. So you just don't need as many calories to get through your day. All right. So here are my 4 tips to kind of tick us off. And then I'm sure our conversation will keep us going. So my tip to start, sorry, I'm just finishing a cough drop, is to jot down your food and exercise. Not forever though, just for 2 weeks. Jot it down because we want to first bring awareness. We actually underestimate our food intake by up to 30%, which is a lot. So we want to understand kind of where we're starting from. We also want to create a baseline for any changes we're going to make. So understanding that baseline, getting 2 weeks of information is really helpful. When you're jotting this down, include time of day, because this is going to be relevant depending on what tools you decide to try. This is going to be really helpful to know kind of what time of day are you typically eating? What time of day are you typically getting some movement in, if at all, right? Because when it comes to really trying to leverage our midlife bodies, we need to pay attention to the timepiece. And let me give you a quick example. We are much more insulin sensitive before 2 p.m. So it actually is better for a midlife body to have a larger breakfast and lunch and to have a smaller dinner. I don't know if you've heard that before. There's a nice little concrete tip within my tip. This might be like a no-brainer because you're all here, but it is really important to learn about your body in midlife because it's really different. You have different food needs, different macronutrient needs, different caloric needs, different fasting needs. So really understanding how your body is different once you're really over 40 is essential. Same with movement. Your strength, cardio, and stretching needs are going to be different. We mentioned sleep briefly earlier. Your bedtime and wake time might shift. The total sleep you need to be rested might shift. Your emotional and stress states are going to be different in midlife. Things that didn't used to tick you off are going to make you go into a little bit of a rage, or you might burst into tears suddenly. So being able to know what supplements might help you in the short term. And side note, supplements are not a long-term solution. They're a short-term band-aid while you're getting to the root cause and addressing that. Or what lifestyle habits you need to add, change in order to create the emotional state you want and the stress management that you want for yourself. And then toxin release. So I said toxin, I also mean hormones. So our bodies are not as good as we continue to age with kind of cleaning things up and getting things excreted. So you, again, might need some short-term supplements to help with that. And the choices you make around what you allow into your house, what products you're using, any endocrine disrupting chemicals that are allowed in or not allowed in, that can make a difference too. All right, so then this was a specific example kind of related to the timing piece and why you want to get a baseline that has time as part of it. I always encourage my clients who are interested in weight loss to take advantage of the 30 minutes after exercise. Again, I don't think this is well known by midlife women, but that is your golden half an hour. That's when you can eat those starchy carbs because those muscles are hungry. So we aim for a 3-to-1 carbs to protein ratio in that after exercise snack or meal, depending on the timing. This is, again, when the body's going to replace the glycogen instead of storing fat. And your cells and insulin are having a better conversation because exercise makes our cells more insulin sensitive. So that's a really like laser focused tip. Tip 2 is like super broad, and tip 3 is like laser focused. And then I said before I would mention circadian rhythm. So this is so essential, ladies. It actually should be tip number 1 because it's that essential. Having a consistent circadian rhythm can actually double your weight loss results. That's how important sleep is. And circadian rhythm, we do think of sleep, but it's really everything: eating, sleeping, and exercising. Not in the same way, not eating the same food, not exercising in the same way, but within the same hour, day to day. Teaches your body she is fed and she is safe. When your body continues to get the message, you are fed, you are safe, you are fed, you are safe, she doesn't hold on to fat in the midsection in the same panicked way. She says, oh, I can burn this because I am going to be fed and I am safe. I mentioned bigger meals earlier when digestion is at its peak. So every system in your body has its own unique circadian rhythm, and you have your overall circadian rhythm. So like your brain has a specific circadian rhythm. As I mentioned, your digestion does. So we want to leverage our digestion being at its peak in, like I said before, 2, and eating our bigger meals earlier. And then I said, eat by 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., either is fine, but truly you need to eat in the morning. I know that there are people out there who are telling women, oh yeah, you should fast until noon. That does not teach your body she is fed and she is safe. That teaches your body, oh gosh, when's the next meal coming? We better hold on. We better not. And then some people will say that you should exercise during that time. No. Exercise is stress. Your body's already stressed because you haven't fed her. So some of this information might contradict other things you've heard. And that's because this information you've just heard is all midlife women specific. We are not little men. We are certainly not younger women. We need information that is specific to our bodies at this time. And that's what you're getting. One more thing about breakfast or breaking your fast by like 9, 10 o'clock. You always want to do it with protein, preferably an animal protein. So that protein triggers your satiety hormone and says like, oh yeah, I'm getting really nourished. And our need for protein increases as we age, whereas our need for carbohydrates decreases as we age. So standard American breakfasts are so carb heavy, right? Cereals, granolas, fruit. I'm not saying fruit is bad. I'm just saying we don't want that to be breakfast because it's glucose. It's easy, quick burn. We want longer, slow burn food, especially in the morning. Okay, so that was kind of a lot. And you can't do everything that I suggested all at once because you'll go crazy and you won't feel good about yourself. So what I tell women is you want to think about it in terms of baby steps. Okay. You're going to do this gradually. You're going to take one thing at a time. Maybe it's just the baseline that you're starting with. And then that's your goal. It's just get the baseline down. And then after that, it's okay, I'm really going to work on that whole protein at breakfast thing and see how I feel. And then maybe after that, you add something else that sounded interesting to you. So it's very much a gradual, natural shift, as opposed to, wow, I have a lot to do, I better do it all at once, or, oh my gosh, there's so much to do, I can't even start. Neither is going to serve you. Let's zero in on something that feels doable and go with that. If I can help you in any way, I'm available. You guys have me for the rest of our hour, but you can also reach out to me via email. Janessa will share my contact with you, or if you want, you can schedule what I call a breakthrough call. And it is an opportunity for you to tell me more about what's going on for you, and for us to talk about really what your vision is for yourself, and for me to share with you how I can help you get there. And I help my clients with a lot of things, and they're all kind of up here, but I highlighted the two that are focused on feeling good in your skin, wearing the clothes you want to wear, being in love with your body, and being strong and active so that you're not in pain, and you can have fun with your partner, if you have one, with your children, your grandchildren, and participate in the activities that you want to now, but also in your golden years. Again, the work we do now in our 40s, 50s, and 60s is so important to the kind of life we have once we're into those golden years. All right. That is enough from me. I'm going to stop my screen share. And I'm going to remove my spotlight just because I want to see a grid. I want to see all of you, and open it up.
Awesome. So I'm going to start, ladies, and then you guys can keep, I have the things from my notes, I have the things you all sent me, and I have everything that you wrote in the things as I ask the questions. If you got more, just keep them coming. So let me start with kind of some of within your tips. One of the things was looking at the non-scale measurements and so forth. So for a waist to hip ratio, what should we be looking for in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not a number memorizer. I realized early on, like, that's just not my strength. So let me pull that up for you. Okay, here we go. All right, so we want a 0.8 or lower to be in the low risk category, and 0.81 to 0.85 is the moderate risk category. 0.86 or higher puts you in high risk.
And how do we then, so we take our waist and divide it, our waist measurement divided by our hip measurement?
Divide the waist by the hip, yes.
Excellent. Groovy. One of the questions was, I'm going to bebop all over.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to throw in the chat, like, how to measure.
Excellent. And Sally had asked, is it unreasonable to think that I can ever get to my 40s weight? Like you were saying, like, this is kind of where we're at and so forth. Yes, we could lose, but what is a realistic expectation if we weighed this much and we've seemingly done nothing different and now we're here? Are we better off just accepting and doing the best we can to stay where we are? Or is there ways on losing weight?
The weight loss is possible in your perimenopause and menopausal years. Is it reasonable to go back to your 40s weight? I don't think I can answer that without knowing the individual and knowing a little bit more about her health history. Things like, how many pregnancies did you have, if any? What are your parents' genetics like? What's your lifelong experience been with weight and food? Because I don't know if if this is shocking to anybody or not. What it is a little shocking to me, but eating disorders have been steadily climbing in the women 40 to 60 age range, because I think there is some harmful messaging out there about if you just try hard enough, if you just cut your calories enough, you can have that 40-year-old weight. And a lot of the work that I do with women is about really shifting the focus away from the scale number and looking at overall health and symptoms. How do you feel? How is your appetite, your cravings, your energy, your sleep, your mood, your sex drive? Did I say energy? Yes. All of these pieces are as indicative of overall wellness as a number on a scale.
One of the things that several people brought up, and I have kind of this as well for myself, one is bloating. And there's bloating, and then there's also, for me, I have a lot of retention. So like by the end of the day, I'm retaining a lot of fluids and so forth. That can affect the number on the scale. Another reason not to look at the scale. But are there ways to reduce bloating and retention in this phase of life?
Yeah, with bloating, I always want to look at food sensitivities. And that doesn't mean you have to get a blood test. It doesn't mean you have to do muscle testing. I really want to work with a woman on, okay, what are you eating right now and what could be a trigger? We can go through our 20s and 30s with no food sensitivities and develop them in our 40s and beyond. So for bloating, that's always like the first line, is figuring out, okay, are there food sensitivities going on here? With fluid retention, it sounds counterintuitive, but drinking more water is actually really helpful for that. There is like some research around lymphosizing, which is basically like jumping up and down, can help with that fluid retention. I am not a lymphosizer, but it is something people do. The other piece is I talked briefly about toxic load and about things that you can do to try to trigger your body to release toxins. So taking a nice sauna, if you have access to a sauna, if not, a really hot bath. And then after the bath, not immediately cooling off, as long as you don't get heat stroke, but just allowing yourself to kind of sweat out some of the toxins will help with the retention piece. Obviously, you should be hydrated before you do anything heat related. So there's lots of different tools that you can try for the water retention feeling.
Is there there's keto, there's paleo, there's low carb, there's low fat, there's low calorie, like I think, raise of hands if you've tried one of the ones that I just mentioned. So is there something that works better than others in this concept of like needing our protein and wanting to maintain our muscle and so forth? Is there kind of a methodology of weight loss that works better at this time, knowing it's a little bit different for everyone?
Right. So I'm glad you said that, Janessa. So every body is different. So there's not like one tried and true, like going to work for everybody, but a few things that work well for midlife women. Cutting back the processed foods. So really saying, I'm not going to eat stuff out of a package as much as I'm eating it now, and just slowly but surely eating real food as much as you can. I mentioned protein needs increase and carbohydrate needs decrease. So really focusing on animal proteins if possible, if you're not a vegetarian or vegan, and getting that in, enough protein in 3 meals a day. Most midlife women do better 3 meals, no snacks. That seems to be a better approach. Then as far as carbohydrates go, you want to look at carbohydrate source. You want vegetables to be your primary carbohydrate source. And that's your, leafy greens, your brassicas. And then after that is your root vegetables and your squashes. And then after that is your fruit. So you can see, all right, if I'm not going to have a lot of carbohydrates and those are my sources, well, then you're eating all real food. So that kind of reinforces that first one. And then as far as fat intake, we do need fat. But again, the source is so important. It needs to not be an inflammatory fat, which is your like canola oil and your vegetable oils. Those are highly processed and cause a lot of inflammation. We didn't talk about inflammation yet, but that is a factor in our overall body composition. So we want to keep that inflammation as low as possible. And so things like avoiding those inflammatory fats is going to help. Identifying food sensitivities that might be causing inflammation is going to help. So I wouldn't say there's one eating approach that I label as like, this is the one for everyone. But depending on what a woman's interested in, I work with what feels right to her. So some women are like, no, I want to count my macros. I really want to understand that I'm getting enough protein, that I'm not overdoing the carbs, that I'm getting enough fat from quality sources. So we do some macro counting. I'm not a believer in counting things forever. I just don't think that's healthy. Again, I think that messes up our relationship with food. I believe that our relationship with food should be enjoyable. I think it should be easy. And I think most women don't have an enjoyable and easy relationship with food. So that is definitely part of the work that I do with clients.
So that being said, where is there kind of a range of macros that we should be aiming towards?
So again, I don't memorize, but let me look it up real quick for you. Okay, so there's a woman, gosh, what's her name? And just Dr. Mary Claire Haber. She has an approach called, I hate this name, but it's called the Galveston diet. It really should be the Galveston approach. It's not a diet. And she has had a lot of success. And basically, when you are trying to lose weight, you do 70% fat, 20% protein, and 10% carbohydrate. And then once you're at your goal weight, you go to phase 2, which is 40% fat, 20% protein, and 40% carbohydrate. So I'll pop that in the chat so people can copy and paste it. You know, this is intense. This is an intense approach for sure, and not one that I necessarily teach, but it's information that I think women should have.
So I'm familiar with her approach and kind of one of her pillars as well, and you mentioned it, is the concept of fasting. And so
Yeah,
what is your thought on fasting at this in this phase of our lives?
So fasting is a tool. And so like any tool, it doesn't work for every woman. There are a lot of contraindications to fasting. And so I think there's a little bit in Dr. Haber, and all due respect, she's, a medical doctor and has gone to a lot of school, and I do have her book and everything. But I think she's a little too like, fasting's for everyone. Like, and that just, I don't believe that at all. And so I think when it comes to fasting, you have to be, first of all, getting good sleep. If you are not getting good sleep and you fast, it's going to freak your body out and you're going to have the opposite effect. The other piece is that you have to already be a fat burner. Our factory setting is to burn fat, but the way we eat over the course of our life tips us into being glucose burners as our preferred fuel source. We have to shift back to being fat burners, because when you're in a fast, that's what you're burning for energy. So if you go into a fast without being an effective fat burner, it freaks your body out. So those two pieces really need to be in place before fasting is tried. I'm a fan of the overnight fast. The research shows that between 12 and 15 hours of an overnight fast is ideal for midlife women. I personally am in that like 12 to 13 hour range very comfortably. And if you get hungry in the morning, I would say try water first. You might be thirsty. Sometimes we misinterpret thirst signals as hunger signals. But if you have a glass of water and you're still hungry 15 minutes later, then it's a true hunger signal. That's hormones. Those are hormones that are signaling, hey, I need nourishment. And I don't like when fasting says, no, no, you ignore that signal. And instead you wait until a certain time. I don't buy that approach as positive. Too many women have been ignoring those their body signals, especially hunger and full signals for so long. I had a client, who had done a few different weight management approaches, and really the first half of her program was all in getting her to re-understand what hunger and full signals looked like, felt like, what her experience was of that, because that is much more aligned with my belief that we need to be gentle with ourselves.
Awesome. All right, here's a good one. Hot flashes 3 to 5 an hour all day plus night sweats. What can help, and then how do you get good sleep when these types of things are happening?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's really interruptive at night. So whenever, hot flashes are a primary concern, there's two things that we talk about in this space. One is actually brain health. So we want to do things that support overall brain health. So that is things like stress management and really having a lot of tools for that. Having a mindfulness practice, things to literally cool down the brain are important. The other piece is insulin and being able to use ketones or fat, for energy. And we found, the research has shown that women who have a harder time using fat, who are more insulin resistant, are more likely to have those hot flashes. In the short term, probably some sort of supplements to help with that makes sense, because you've got to get sleep. You've got to figure out like, what tools can I access in the short term to just get the sleep while I'm working on this root cause stuff. So magnesium and taurine are two really great supplements. Magnesium is mineral. The best form would be magnesium glycine. You start at 300 milligrams of elemental magnesium. Oh, you got yours right there. Look at that.
It's empty. I need to order more. That's
good.
Why it's sitting here.
So magnesium alone might help a lot, but a lot of times if the hot flashes are that severe, you need to add in taurine, Taurine, and that is an amino acid. And those two just work really synergistically together. And so I think it's 3 milligrams of taurine. Oh, look at that. I memorized some numbers. I get asked about those ones a lot. So, so those two, like about a half hour before bed. Capsule if you're worried about drinking too much before bed and needing to pee, but powder's a little bit more bioavailable mixed in water. So, you decide what feels right for you. So that would definitely be something I would recommend. And peppermint essential oil is a really nice cooling. Peppermint essential oil is a nice cooling essential oil. So before bed, you could make a spray and kind of spray the back of your neck, your inner wrists. When you wake up and you're hot, spray, just to cool that body down quickly in a gentle and natural way.
Excellent. So you had talked about, one of the things that we need to be looking at is muscle maintenance. And Pam asked, cardio and weight training equally, or is it better to increase one over the other?
They're both really important, but certain types. So for cardio, low impact daily movement is way more important than going to Orange Theory, several times a week, or doing a HIIT session on your Peloton. That it's that low impact daily movement. Walking's great. I'm not talking about, getting any fancy machines or anything. That's going to move the needle more than, increasing your cardio and trying to run X number of miles a week. And in fact, that's probably going to stress your body out. When it comes to weight training, a lot of women are averse to using free weights or even weight machines. So I always say it's fine to start with body weight. And if 2 times a week you can commit to what are called the 4 primal movements, and that is push-ups and planks, squats, and pull-ups. Those 4 things use so many of your different muscles. And I got to tell you, I have very little upper body strength. That's just not, I'm a legs and butt girl. That's where all my strength comes from. So for me, doing 30 push-ups is just not possible, but I can do 30 wall push-ups. And then once I'm really good at that, then I can go to the floor and do, a modified push-up and do that for a few weeks. And then maybe I can start off with 10 push-ups and maybe I can get to 12 the following week. So remember when I said that baby steps earlier are so essential? This is why, because we think, oh, well, I can't do push-ups, so like, forget about it. I'm not even gonna try. We have to modify things for ourselves. I can't do a full pull-up, please. I don't even know when the day will come that I can do that, but I can do it on those gym assisted machines where they have the weights to counterweight you. And I can slowly but surely take some weight away. I think I got it. I forget what I was at. My gym just closed, long story, but I'm like, oh, I was doing so well on this. I felt so good about that. So just those 4 movements to start are really good. Janessa, afterwards, I'm happy to send to everybody some videos for the progressions of those so they can see the modifications.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I had this question, Sally just asked this as well. When you were talking about, okay, we should eat before 8 to 9 or between 9 and 10 or no later than those. We should use the 30 minutes right after exercise, and we should have a starchy carbohydrate then, but we should be starting our day with animal protein. What order of our day, where should exercise be? Sally's like, I fast overnight, walk the dog for an hour, and then eat my breakfast. Should I rearrange? And I get up, I go right to the gym, and then I come home, and it could be an hour and a half before I actually eat. So what is optimal?
So everybody is different, of course, but the midlife kind of optimal would be, so Sally, an hour walk without breakfast, that I'm okay with. A intense gym workout, that's probably stressing your adrenals a bit. So it's all about, if you're going to do a fasted exercise, it should be low impact and it should be no more than an hour. So a low impact walk, that's fine. Really anything else is going to stress the body. And then, if you're fasting and doing the walk and then having breakfast, you want that breakfast that's when you have that starchy carb, but you also want to have plenty of animal protein too. You want to get to lunch is the goal. So you want to make sure that breakfast is a really nourishing meal that triggers that satiety hormone to say like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to work through this and then I'm going to be able to dip into those fat stores and then that'll get me to lunch. So that's kind of the signaling we're trying to send the body.
Awesome. Also, for those who are watching, before we leave, if down in the chat box, there's 3 dots and it says more, and you can save chat. So that way, all the things that she's added here, and so forth, you can save the chat. And then that way you have all of, again, our minds can only remember so many things. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things we were doing comments and introductions, Wendy said, I'm done with menopause. We're not ever, are we done? And that was one of the questions that someone had written to me as well. You had said, like, in the transition from perimenopause to menopause, you could gain, 6.5 pounds and so forth. I too am over the hump, and it's not like that's stopped. So this is just the phase we're in, right? Like, this is kind of where we're at. And that's a long period of time. Like, does anything change? Does it get better?
So let me address a couple things. One is that technically menopause is one day. Menopause is the day when you have not had a menstrual bleed for 12 months. And if you didn't throw yourself a party, well, throw yourself a belated one, because that's amazing. Okay. There's a lot to celebrate there. I will be having a menopause party. You're all invited, you know, when it happens. I'm in perimenopause, so I'm in a different place right now. So then we're technically postmenopausal, but a lot of, you know, kind of general, you know, the way most people refer to that day from menopause onward is as menopause. So whether you call it postmenopausal or menopause, yes, that can still be a symptomatic time. And if it is for you, then we definitely want to make some tweaks, because perimenopause is actually the, like, technically the more symptomatic time, because your hormones are more in flux. I can show you guys really quick, do a quick screen share of what I'm talking about here. Let me pull up just this one image. Where did you go? There you are. Sorry. Screen share this. You guys see that? Is that big enough there?
Yep.
So in premenopause, you can see, you know, the consistency. Perimenopause is cookie. I mean, look at this. This is crazy. And then in postmenopause, things are much calmer. So if you're still having symptoms during this time, well, this is probably not how things look hormonally for you. They probably are still looking something like this, and they shouldn't be. So there needs to be some real digging into, well, why? What needs to change so that root cause is addressed? And this is more the experience. And if it's, you know, if the estrogen is low and it's problematic, well, then there's things you can do, not to raise your estrogen, but to help with, you know, the things that are typically low estrogen related. Like, for example, dry vagina and poor elasticity of the vagina. It's very common once you're postmenopausal, but there's things that you can do to help with that. There are more intense things like vaginal laser therapy, which I know sounds awful, but is incredibly effective. And then there's gentler things that you can do. You know, if there's one takeaway, it's that everyone here should be using lube. When you're intimate with yourself or your partner, you need to be using lube. Things aren't as juicy down there. Why fight it? My favorite is called Good Clean Love. I'll put that in the chat, because it is good, it's clean, meaning it's not, doesn't have any toxins, and it helps with the love.
Excellent. So if you are, how do you know? Two questions. How do you know you actually are in perimenopause? And then for those who have, and I'm going to answer a question or ask a question in regards to someone else. If you had a hysterectomy long time ago, clearly you're not having your periods anymore, and you're still having symptomatic and so forth. It's hard to know where am I at in the concept of things. So how does one know where you're at in this phase?
So in the perimenopause, how you know you're there is generally you know, you're experiencing symptoms. Some women go through the perimenopause transition like it's no big deal. Those women are not my clients. And you know, good for them. I'm so happy for them. I'm not that woman. I needed some supports. So that's how you know you're in perimenopause. You know you're in menopause when it's been 12 months, you haven't had a period. Sorry, what was the last piece, Janessa?
If you were, for example,
hysterectomy?
had a hysterectomy, so you don't have periods, so how do you know?
You can do a blood test and look at your what's called FSH and LH. They're two different hormones, and basically your doctor will be able to say, oh, because your FSH is here and your LH is here, you're in menopause. So I would say that's worthwhile finding out. But otherwise, you really want to use your period as your marker for that. the other piece that we don't have time to get into, but, hysterectomy is one thing, but an ovectomy as well is another thing. I mean, that puts you into medical menopause right away, and that's a whole different experience. And is something a friend of mine actually just chose for herself because she had a particular, she'd had some genetic testing done, and that felt like the best option to her.
Excellent. One last question, and it's a big one.
Oh,
with 3 minutes.
we'll get it.
Hormone replacement treatments.
Therapy, yeah.
Therapy. Good, bad, indifferent. What's your thoughts?
Again, it is a tool. It is not for every woman. Some women go on it and they feel so much better, and some women go on it and they feel worse. And it's like there's bioidentical hormone therapy, there's hormone replacement therapy, and there's hormone therapy, and there's compounded hormone therapy. I mean, it's a whole other area, and it's not even what I'm an expert in, but I know a little bit, I know enough of it so that I can explain it to women. And then if they want to pursue it, offer a provider. My 2 cents on it is you got to find a provider who's very savvy in it, because it's going to take time to figure out the right levels of which hormones. It's going to take some trial and error, and you want a provider who's invested in that. There is the North American Menopause Society, NAMS. They have a database of providers, and you can go onto their database and look for a provider who is menopause certified. I think all women should be all women should see menopause certified doctors once they're over 40, because too often they're getting misinformation. They're being told, oh, you're too young to be having hormonal issues. That's what I was told. Or, sorry, you just got to like bear it and grin, like that's just being a woman. Or there's nothing you can do other than hormone therapy. Also not true. So that didn't really like get into the weeds of that, but it's like a really brief.
Awesome.
I can come back and talk about just that if your people want that.
Perfect. All right. One more question, because Laura just sent this, and this is a good question.
Okay.
Healthy fats. I will say that my cholesterol, as over the last 3 years, has really gone up as well, kind of like without, that seems to be kind of a symptom. So that same idea, like, are there healthier fats for us to be selecting?
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around fat and cholesterol. I would just say, is it your overall cholesterol that's increasing? Is it your LDL, your HDL? We want to look at that. We want to look at lifestyle. We want to look at, again, genetics, past medical history, parents and grandparents' past medical history before we get like too afraid. But it is something to watch for sure. And that's not my area of expertise, but I will say for healthy fats, that's your coconut oil, your avocado oil, your grass-fed butter, your lean proteins. Those are going to be healthier fat. And when you opt for a fattier cut of animal protein, if it can be grass-fed, if it can be pasture-raised, grass-fed and grass-finished is even better. Really looking at what's the animal eating, because whatever the animal's eating, you're eating too.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, olive oil's good. Sorry, Laura.
She's like, I'm not giving up my olive oil.
Yeah, no. The different oils all have what's called a smoke point. The highest smoke point, avocado has a nice high smoke point. Olive oil is lower. So I tend to not use that for sauteing. I tend to use avocado oil. I love olive oil in certain dressings. And as long as you're roasting vegetables below, I want to say 350. But again, numbers aren't really my thing. So I'd have to look that up. Grapeseed, I haven't found like really conclusive evidence on grapeseed. I see like a little of both, and any seed oils I get nervous about because they can be really processed. It does have a high smoke point. Okay, that's good to know. I just don't know enough about grapeseed oil, to be honest.
Awesome. Great questions, you guys. Thank you all for coming. Kathy, this has been amazing. I really think that we could talk. I don't know about others, but this was just not something that my foremothers talked about this on I just think that this is something that we need to all talk about on a regular basis because it is just a thing that happens and we need to know what in the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So
Tell your friends that you came and you learned some stuff and you think there's more to know.
exactly.
Just be brave and be like, hey, are you in menopause yet? Like, I know there's like sometimes socially like, oh, should we talk about this? Yes, we should.
Yes, we need to have a club. And there needs to be, just like they have those period packs that you can get your daughters when they have their period, we need menopause packs. Like, I did not celebrate mine. Mine came and I didn't even really pay attention. All of a sudden I was like, I can't remember last time I had my period. And yeah, I need to have it in a belated menopause party.
I think you should. I had a period party with my daughter. I took her out to tea and we wore fun hats.
We did not, did anyone have, I thought my mom was pretty cool. We did not have, that was not a thing. So,
we're
awesome.
changing the world, ladies.
Yes, exactly. I have boys. I just need to explain to them all of these things so that they're not blindsided. My husband would like die if I even brought up any of these things.
No, that's part of changing the world.
Yeah, exactly. Again, in the bottom right hand, like I have mine meeting chat on the side, the 3 dots, it says save chat. And then that'll just save it to computer. When you turn this off, a little thing will pop up and there the message will be. So that way you have all of the stuff that she said. But I will post the replay within the community. I will send a link for it for YouTube as well. And I will include all of Kathy's contact information so that you can continue. Because Kathy, you have a newsletter, correct?
I do. Yeah. If you want to.
Excellent. So I will give them all your information so they can opt in because I don't know, there's 9,000. And somewhere it said there's like 50 different symptoms that come with perimenopause, most of which I was just equating to like, I'm just annoyed by my entire family. But then I was like, oh, I can say that is because of the change. So and I
also have a Facebook group where I do a training once a week. And that training I just did for you all is very similar. It's usually about 15 minutes and a very specific topic. And that's free and open to all women.
Awesome. I will send that all to me and I will give that all to them. So
amazing. Thank you, Janessa.
Awesome. Have a great evening, you guys.
Night, everybody.
Take your magnesium, go to sleep. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.